When you click Create in Scratch, you're going to automatically have Scratch the cat, who is your default sprite. But if you would like to add an additional sprite, you're going to come down here to the lower right hand corner of your screen, and you can choose 4 different ways to get a sprite. You can choose a sprite from the Sprite library. They have a lot of them for you to choose from. You could paint your own. You could get a surprise sprite, which is a random choice from the library, or you could upload your own from a different file. I'm going to go to the Sprite library and choose one. I'm going to choose the ballerina. So now I have the ballerina. If you have a sprite that you no longer want, then you can go in and on that selected sprite right down here where the sprites are listed, you can choose the X and it will delete that current sprite. Setting a starting location will help you to have your sprite or your character show up or respawn back in the same location where you would like them to start every single time that you replay your animation. And so let's learn how to set a starting location. Scratch the cat, for example, when you hit create and you start a new file in Scratch, he will always respawn, or he always starts at X0, Y0, which is right here below the stage area. So it always tells you what your current XY location is. He always starts at X0, Y0. But if I don't want him starting at that location, then simply take your sprite and drag them to the location on the screen where you want them to start, and you'll notice that his XY location changed. I can come over here to the motion category and I can grab a go to XY. You'll notice that the numbers that are in my go to XY are the same numbers that are down here in his current location, and that's because I drug him to that point before I brought in the code block, the go to XY code block. And if you put them in the location that you want them first before you grab the block, it will auto set those plot points into your block for you. On our last slide, we set up a starting location for Scratch the cat. And so this particular slide, we want to talk about setting a starting costume. And costumes are just a variation or a different way that that particular character can look. So if we come up here to the Costumes tab in the upper left, you'll notice that Scratch comes preloaded with 2 costumes. He has straight legs in one, and he has bent legs in the other. And so you can choose from those costumes that are preloaded, or you can also come down to the bottom of the Costumes tab and you can choose to add additional costumes. You can choose from the costume library, paint one, get a surprise one, upload a costume, or use the camera on your computer. Either way, to set a starting costume, you'll want to pick which one that you want to use. I'm going to use costume 1 here because that's how I want his legs to look. So I'm going to go back to the code and I'm going to go to the looks category. I'm going to choose switch costume to block, and I'm going to put it underneath of my go to XY. Make sure that I'm in costume 1. If I needed a different costume, I could drop that down and choose a different costume. So now I have my starting location and my starting costume set. To change costumes, there's two ways that you can go about coding your character or your sprite to change costumes. You can use the switch costume command whenever you need them to switch costumes, or you could use the next costume command if you would like them to kind of roll through each costume as you have it created. But what if you need your character to be able to face both directions? Let's say that you want your character to walk across the screen to the right, and then you want them to turn around to walk across the screen to the left. So let's talk about how you can make that happen. I'm going to take costume 1, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to choose duplicate. Notice now I have two identical costumes here, but one is named costume 1, one is named costume 3 because I already had a costume 2. I can go into costume 3 here. I can come over to flip horizontal or flip vertical and be able to turn that character to face the other way. So now I have a costume that I can code in to make that character go the opposite direction if I need to. And remember, costume changes are just a different way that that character looks. I'm going to go ahead and click on this set of code here so that it resets my cat to be facing the way that I want him to be facing. Next, I would like to talk about the differences between some of your move blocks, different ways to get your character to move. So I'm going to come back to the motion category. You've got a couple of different options on getting your characters to move. You can have them go to random positions or follow your mouse pointer. You've got a go to XY command, which we've already chosen to use up here to respawn our character, which takes them to a specific location on the screen. If I used it again, it would teleport my character to that location. I've got a glide to a random position. I've got a glide 1 second to a specific position. And so I've got a lot of different options there. I also up here, which I guess I skipped past it, I have the move command. So let's go ahead and let's practice real quick with the move command. I'm going to bring it down here. I'm not going to connect it in with my other blocks. Think of the move command as being able to take a step at a time. And on our screen, there is an invisible XY axis behind the stage of where your character sits. And right in the middle was X0, Y0. If I went from the 0 point or the midpoint all the way out to the right-hand edge, that's 240 steps. If I went from the 0 to the left-hand edge, that's a negative 240 steps. So for example, our screen, our stage, is 480 steps wide from left to right. So moving 10 steps, you're not going to see much happen. So I'm going to go ahead and move 100 steps. So if I click on that, that is going to have him move 100 steps at a time. Okay, and so that's what that would do. I'm going to go ahead and click up here and bring him back to his starting location. And let's talk about if we wanted him to glide to a certain position. Remember that if we have something that has an XY location on it, if we drag our character to that spot to begin with, it will preload our XY coordinates in there. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up here, and I'm going to go click on this. And now we see him move there. Where instead, if we move him 100 steps, it's almost like he teleports 100 steps. So it depends on what kind of look you're looking for. Are you looking for something that has a teleportation feel to it, or are you wanting to see your character move from point A to point B? Okay, let's talk about moving your sprite in the opposite direction, which would be in the negative direction. Because when you're in the motion category, if you're using the move 10 steps block, that is going in a positive direction on the x-axis. If you are using a change x by 10 block, that is also moving you in a positive direction on the x-axis. And the same goes for the change y block, and that it would be moving you in the positive direction on the y-axis. If you wanted to go in the negative direction or in the opposite direction on any of those, then you need to know how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick with the move block, so I'm going to get rid of these two. And earlier we had where we were moving 100 steps. And so we know that if we click that, it moves us to the right on our screen, which would be the positive direction on the x-axis. So if I click on that, that moves us 100 steps. But what if I want to go backwards that same direction, or that same 100 steps, but I want to go the opposite way or backwards? So I would bring in another move block. I'm going to make it be 100 steps as well. But this time I'm going to put a negative in front of that, and that will make me move in a negative direction. Now, if I put these two blocks together and I click on them, you're not going to see anything happening. And that's because when you put two blocks together that don't have some sort of timing on it, like this glide does, these don't have any timing on them, which means the computer is going to run these two blocks of code at the exact same time, meaning the only thing you're going to see is the very last thing that happens. And so if you want to slow that down a little bit so that you can see both move, you're probably going to have to put a wait command in the middle of those two. So if I go to control, I can get a wait 1 second, and now I can click on that, and that is going to take him forward and backward. Same thing is going to happen if I put the move block under the glide block. You'll see him glide, and then all of a sudden he's going to teleport. So I'm going to put another wait 1 second in between. I'm going to go ahead and hook all of this together. Let's do a quick preview to see what it looks like. All right, so I have made my character go in the opposite direction by using a negative sign. If you would like a set of your code to happen over and over again, rather than putting that code in a whole bunch of times, you can choose some blocks that will make it repeat that action. We actually, in the control command, we have repeat and a forever block. And so if you use the forever block, then that is exactly what it says. It will do those particular commands forever and ever. Where you've got the repeat block. I'm going to go ahead and grab the repeat block. You don't have to put it around the whole thing. You can slide it in where you want that chunk of code to be repeated, and it will stretch down over that chunk of code. So my motion where I had my sprite going forward and backward, I don't want to quite do that 10 times. I'm going to put in that I want that to happen 4 times. Let's test that and see what it looks like. So he glides. And he's done. Perfect. So he repeated the forward-backward movement 4 times. For the code that we've made so far, the way that we've made it run is we've come over here and we've actually clicked on the code to make it run. But if we had more than one sprite and each of those sprites needed to be moving at the same time, then we want something that can run all your sprites and possibly even changes to your background at the exact same time. That way you don't have to go click on each one of them to make them run. So what we can do is we can go to the events category and we can choose a when green flag clicked. We can put that at the top of our code and we can actually come up here to this green flag. And if we had multiple things happening, such as a second sprite was also needing to run and some backgrounds were needing to change, then this green flag would run all of those at the same time. But I'm going to go ahead and click it and make sure everything works. So gliding forward, moving forward and backward 4 times. Perfect. Looks like everything worked the way that we wanted it to.